Chosen One!
Welcome to The Chosen One. I'm your host, Qui-Gon Din, and today on the podcast, we are joined by Kenny from Zion's Finest. It's been a while since we've heard from you, Kenny. Had Evergreen open, and we're going to be talking about meta because the meta is in a very drastic spot right now. So what you been up to?
So you mentioned I came to the Evergreen Open, played a lot of Kane and Cassian in preparation for that. We also did a little bit of practicing. We proxied some Delta once those were revealed in order to get a sense, because that tournament was actually the first tournament where they were legal. At least that they were legal for that tournament. So we have played and practiced against a lot of Delta. I have played a lot of Cassian things, primarily Kane and Cassian, but like a lot of Cassian things. And then in the lead up to Zi-Fi, we were kind of trying to just get a sense as to anything that we thought could be strong meta contenders. So we played Chris Sampson's Vader Iden list, the Pistol Whip list. We played Mandos. We played lots of iterations of Republic. Played with and against a lot of Delta. I was primarily grinding Cassian things, just trying to figure out if I was going to be like what I was going to run. Ultimately, I knew I was going to run Baze and Cheer at something, and the question was what else. So I will just say, and then after Zi-Fi, we've just all been kind of cooling our jets because we played so much in the lead up to that. And as I talked about this on the Slack, as we can talk about here, I feel a little bit burned out on the current meta. So I haven't actually played anything since then, but we should be starting back up again soon.
Yeah, the current game state. So, listeners, Boss had a very slow start. He got released at Evergreen. I played Delta, and I regret playing them at Evergreen. Had I played my Mace Mundi list, I actually probably would have made Top Cut. I played Delta, and I think Delta is as strong as everyone was worried about it being. I think it is that powerful. It's not even the auto damage that's the overpowering part of it. It's how Boss's abilities worded. And the amount of movement. But the if you changed his bomb, I think Boss actually becomes perfectly fine. But it's the fact that it's range 3 from any freaking clone.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be an active point. I mean, that's been my big contention with that ability is that we should really avoid having these kind of unlimited range effectively, because range 3 of any point of any clone is just like that's not even a limiter. It just kind of limits what you can do in the start in terms of diving your opponent's backline. But as soon as you're in the mid and late game, it means you can effectively attack any point, and that's just too good, especially with how mobile Boss is. It's just kind of insane.
The biggest thing is it's like, if they just change the wording to how it is on Endor Leia, I actually think Boss is perfectly fine. Perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And some people are going to complain about how many auto damage abilities the clone list has access to, with Wrecker, Hunter, Wrecker, Boss, and then 7 Scorch. I think the auto damage list is fine because it puts kind of a limitation on Kanan, and Kanan has been driving the meta since his release as well. So it's kind of a soft hit to him without having to nerf him. And changing the meta is good. But the amount of mobility that list has pushes on the game state so much that I think it's a little much.
So I think the problem is that I agree that the mobility is like Boss's mobility is his best feature, and people don't quite see that when they first see his card. But once you've played with him and against him, it is 100% his mobility. But the issue is that his mobility is paired also with incredible stats, right? Like it's not just that he's mobile, but that he's mobile, that he can hit for consistent damage, and then that he has this bomb, right, for free damage. And so it's kind of like everything together, and that I don't know, like it's all kind of. I agree the mobility is the biggest problem, but it's all kind of like one thick knot that needs to be tamped down.
If you cut down the mobility aspect of him, yes, he's going to be a really aggressive list, but he has a huge weakness, and that is taking down the units. Ignore Boss. Don't try to kill Boss, because then you just make his attack freaking bonkers. But taking out 7 Scorch and Fixer, which there is answers to that. The Vader Iden list is actually a very good matchup against it. But the mobility is where it's getting a little, it's pushing a little thing. That's our thoughts on Boss. He is new. I don't think you really need to touch on Seven Scorch all that much because while they feel strong,
Mhm.
Rule 17 does not feel broken unless you completely build around that. And if you are building around Rule 17, you are not playing full Delta Box.
Yeah,
Um,
let me I should say I think my one issue with Rule 17 is I don't like that the character that dashes so how it's worded, it says after another allied galactic republic within 3 makes a combat action, this unit may use this ability. Choose a character in this unit, and a chosen character can dash and then make an attack. The problem is that Sev might be the one who's within range 3 of the attacking character, but then Scorch on the other side of the map can perform a dash. That's what I think is like, again, it's these weird, like, not like these weird rangeless abilities that we are giving Delta that just makes in the hands of very skilled players leads to some really just like kind of incredible upper bound plays that no one else really has access to. So I agree. Like, I don't think that, like, we've talked about, addressing Delta, and I don't really know what knob you would adjust with Delta in order to, or with Seven Scorch in order to make them feel fair. I mean, I think they're fine. The issue is again, just like something like this with Rule 17, I don't think it's working like how it was intended to work, in my opinion. And I wouldn't mind if they FAQ'd that to be like the one who is drawing distance is also the one who makes the attack and dash. So
I'm completely fine with how Rule 17 is. Unlike certain other aspects of primaries that we'll get to, you can play around it as you just put a pin on them and
sure,
everything pins. You also
yeah,
just kill them and then it's starting to cost 2 force. Again, Rule 17 really only feels broken if you build a list that specifically is about abusing it, and you're not doing that with Boss because the problem with Boss is he's doing a lot of stuff for your team, but most of the time Boss in those Delta lists has to be your Shatterpoint target. Otherwise, you do not have the force economy to do anything. Um
yeah,
and I, where you need to hit it is either change it so Boss cannot get force back for wounding with his bomb. That could be also start. It should
yes,
be when
big
he
fan.
wounds someone through an attack, he gets to refresh force.
Yep,
And
yep,
then you change the bomb to work the same way that Endor Leia's bomb works. Cool.
yeah,
You get a little extra mobility and a little extra strength that way, but it's within range 3 of Boss. And
yep,
cool. You want to do the bomb to get you that side of the board all the way up to the midline. Well, now that whole side of the board are pure targets. Your opponent has a ton of attack targets that they can just focus down. A really strong
yeah,
play, but everything has to stay in formation, which fits more to Delta Squad's whole shtick in the game is fighting
yeah,
information. The rangelessness of it is a little absurd.
yeah.
Um,
I think we're totally in agreement on those.
yeah, Cassian, and this is the part where people are saying, is this meta worse than the Iden meta? And I think it is because I think I'll say my little argument for it, and then I want you to respond because I
Sure.
feel it's just the breakpoints in the first meta were so bad. Everything having the 7 health for Republic was such a huge drawback, and that it just was
Yeah.
not ready for. Other than the defensive stats of Dark Troopers was absurd, but
Yeah.
the health breakpoints, because once that health breakpoints kind of got fixed, does not one shot stuff near as much anymore compared to as she used to. Yes, task is part of it, but it's the
Yes.
breakpoints. The problem I'm having with this meta and why I think this meta is worse is that Cassian is putting so much pressure on the game, both on he has the best revenge trigger in the game. This is
Mhm.
like by far it's too generic, and he brings the best attrition to the game, and he doesn't even have to do anything to do it. The bomb is stupid. The Shatterpoint ability
Yeah.
is stupid when you combine it with the best revenge trigger in the game. A list, a character should not be bringing the best attrition and the best revenge in the game on one piece. And he's 9
Yeah.
points.
Yeah. So here's my thoughts on this, and I mean, and we haven't even talked about Bayes and Chirrut yet, but I'll say this. So Cassian was released earlier in the year. Cassian didn't win a GT until the Lone Star Open. I think that's right. Yeah, he didn't win until the Lone Star Open, which was that was in early August. Okay, so I think Cassian was he since he's been released, he absolutely has been very very strong, and the reasons that you have identified. I think the this town is too good, and it's a dumb ability. Like it's got insane variance, right? Like we have had many games where one player has rolled a 3 and the other player has rolled a 0 or a 1, and so you're like, oh, that's awesome. I just got 15 damage on you, right? And you got nothing. And or right, like the problem is like you are playing, I'm playing Cassian. You don't even have Cassian, and I'm just effectively doing 15 free damage to you. That's insane. And it is, I mean, again, it's one of those things where I can understand how, like, when they were testing, they're like, oh, this seems good, but like, we're going to assume that you're going to hit 1.7, right? So you're going to be in between 1 and 2 damage most of the time. That's fine. Like, that doesn't seem too crazy, especially when we're only giving him 2 force and everything, like his abilities don't cost a ton. But like in as that has played out, it's become clear that it's just too good. Like that ability is too strong. And then you couple that with his Shatterpoint ability, giving all these extra dice, especially to the Rangers, to the Rebel Commandos, and Bayes and Chirrut. That's just, again, it's just too much. He has the best revenge trigger. He has the most flexible revenge trigger that can just go anywhere. And then he's also bringing the aggro. So we're in just this worst meta place in terms of what Cassian does. Like it used to be, oh, well, it's fine. We can bring Cam and Obi-Wan in order to deal with these revenge lists. You can't do that because Cassian can just stay ahead of you on damage. And so it's just kind of a tough spot. And again, that doesn't even bring in Bayes and Chirrut. Now, I will say, like I said earlier, Cassian didn't win a GT until Bayes and Chirrut were released. And so I think that he was very good, and maybe eventually we are going to kind of get there anyway. But it wasn't until those guys came in that he just really, because they took all of his weaknesses, being he was his Shatterpoint targets was most of the time just kind of the rebel commandos, took his force issues, took the fact that, I mean, they're tanky secondary or support unit, and just kind of fixed all of them, right? And so now he's just the best, and you can run with the best support unit in the game, and it's just too much.
So I will push to why he didn't win until, the Lone Star Open. He was still
Yeah,
taking several top cut slots immediately
sure,
after
absolutely.
release. But
Yep.
we were also in a state of fresh balance pass.
Yeah,
Republic may have
absolutely.
been overrepresented in those early GTs with just people. Look at all the clones finally are playable. Let's
Yep,
play.
for sure.
A lot of people wanted to play Republic, and I it's kind of like we saw a lot less Empire was being played because everyone thought, oh, Nerf makes it bad. No, Iden is still really good.
Yep.
Iden is still very much a threat. Now, Vader
Yeah.
2 is kind of dog crap right now, but he
Yeah.
he went up from being like one of the better primaries. I think Vader 2 is like something at like a 36% win rate right now. Like he tanked on
Yeah.
the boards, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But I think I've played enough Bayes and Chirrut outside of Cassian. If you're playing them outside of Cassian, they feel perfectly fine. They have a consistent floor, but they don't
Yeah.
spike near as much as Han and Chewie do on the table, and they feel perfectly balanced outside of Cassian. They feel actually like, okay, this is what a 5 should be doing. The
Yeah.
problem is when you pair them with Cassian, it is everything's umped
Yeah.
up to like 15 on the scale of 10. Commandos under
Yeah.
Cassian feel really stupid. Bayes and Turret
Yeah.
feel really stupid under Cassian. And I'm not sure if that's a Bayes and Turret problem or a Cassian problem, because Cassian is very much the thing enabling this package. And it's the
Yeah.
9 points, it's the sharpshooter with the Shatterpoint type stuff.
Yeah.
They put too much stuff here. Cassian's doing like what Lumi used to do to the board just by being on the board. Her identity was that good. Cassian
Yeah.
overshadows everything.
Yeah.
And
The problem is like they overlap, right? Like, so because Bayes and Chirrut, they can only do, 6 to 7 damage, right, with like pins and stacking conditions and everything like that on their attacks. And so, yes, they can double tap and bring down most things, but like it's not the case that they're not going to one shot anything. The problem is now, well, we've got this town, so we're going to take, 1 to 2 to 3 health off of everything. And now all of a sudden, yes, like we they are going to start one shotting things, right? And then he gives them their sharpshooter or their impact ability with his Shatterpoint. So now they're going to be able to consistently hit that spot, in terms of being able to climb their trees. And then the problem is that he's like, oh, well, I've got this force economy problem. And they're like, no, you don't. Like, we'll give you a force and you're going to shatter us every time. Right. And so they completely synergize in this way that just makes all of them just so much better than they need to be.
Oh yeah,
And so,
it's stupid. I've
yeah.
My brother has this play pattern. He did this to me, and he was playing Kanan, but he directly, forcefully, he knew he was going to win the struggle, and then he just pushed two characters onto points with Cassian, or not with Cassian, with Kanan, because he knew the bomb was going to go off. So he put two different characters onto points, and then with the bomb, 3 of my units went down. Like,
yeah, that's insane. Like, no one should be able to do that. And here's some stats on this. So Cassian has been out on Longshanks. He's got like a 60% win rate. Okay. On top cut games, meaning like players like at the top end of the curve, he has an almost 70% win rate. And he has been played. I mean, he's been played in over 70 games. He has a 60% play rate, meaning he's being played a lot, and he is winning a ton. That's crazy. Baze and Chirrut have almost identical stats and have over a 70% win rate, and they have an even higher play rate. So the problem is that both of these units, typically what you'll see with this stuff is that something that has a really high play rate will have a win rate that is pretty close to 50%, right? Because the idea should be that like the 50%, like we're kind of like hitting the middle of the curve, and if something's being played a lot, like just naturally it should be brought down to that point. The problem here, especially because like one, you're gonna be playing a lot of mirrors, right? And that will naturally like bring down your win rate. The problem is that Cassian and Baze and Chirrut absolutely do not have that problem, right? They are being played a ton and they are winning a ton. Like they're being played more than anything at the top cut. Nothing's coming close to them at the top cut. And they're winning. Like it used to be, we were like, oh, Cam is so good. Cam had, I think, almost a 60% win rate. And we were like, oh, he's kind of dominating the meta. Cam right now at the top end has a less than 50% win rate, because he just like he's amazing, but his list just cannot keep up with what Cassian and Baze and Chirrut are doing.
I love Mundi, but
yeah,
like, spoiler, me and my brother, we're working on our tier list that we're going to start be doing yearly at the end of the year now, because this GT season's pretty much over. Mundi's not even in our top 5 primaries anymore.
That's so crazy, right?
He's in A tier, but he's nowhere near S. There's only 2 S tier primaries right now. And it's because they just completely dwarf the meta. It's pretty spoiler, as you can guess which 2 those are. It's Cassian and Boss, and right now, I do think that at Adepticon, I do think that Boss is going to overtake Cassian as the best performing primary. And that's just because of how America actually plays the game. They like playing the more aggressive, more dynamic scoring list that can also have the output. Look at Vader Iden. It was one of the best. Hunter Boss is going to be that style. And I think that because of that, I think it's going to be the favored list. It just does a lot of stuff. And Cassian, though, I think it's going to be really close. But like you said, we haven't seen a top cut since Baze and Chirrut's release that the people you're not seeing these premier lists that aren't at least having Cassian somewhere in their list or Boss somewhere in their list. It's very, very disconcerting and not a good thing.
No,
like, it's good in the fact that I know exactly what I'm going to play against at Worlds, but we had such a good meta, and Now it's completely we're back to the same style meta we were at last Adepticon. I
So
think
yeah,
go for it.
you go. So I will say that I disagree in that I don't think it's as bad as the Iden meta, and maybe I'm just like splitting hairs. Although I totally understand where you're coming from, and I think that you make some excellent points. The issue for us with the Iden meta was that as we played the game more, right, and especially like we didn't go to Adepticon, we did go to LVO, and which was right before Adepticon, and for us, it became very clear that Iden was not only the best thing, but like Iden was the best thing with no bad matchups, right? Like there were no bad matchups for Iden. And in the hands of a skilled player, it was assuming normal variance, it was very difficult for Iden to lose games into honestly anything, like even Kanan. And we played it a ton. We played dozens and dozens and dozens of games of the mirror, of like iterations on the mirror, right? Like assuming like certain kind of openings. And it just became very clear that like Iden just could not lose. Now, the problem, so right now, I think the issue is that Boss and Cassian both have play into each other. I think it is especially the case, and I think it's interesting that you bring this up. I think this might be a hot take, but I think that Delta Hunter has the capacity to be even a stronger list than Cassian just because of how flexible it can be. Like, I think Cassian's game plan is you're relying on good bombs, you're relying on the revenge trigger, and you're relying on Baze and Chirrut to carry you with these really strong Shatterpoint activations. Delta Hunter, like or something, Delta something, just can do so much in terms of like the world is kind of your oyster, and you don't need to play the attrition game like you would think you do, and you can get a like you can control Cassian right in a way that you wouldn't expect like when you first start playing that. And so, maybe I'm splitting hairs in that like I think there are multiple lists that you can run like Baze and Chirrut. I'm sorry, Cassian and Boss have play into each other. So there's two lists, right, that you can run
Yeah.
as opposed to just the one. But I do think it is absolutely the case. I will not contest this. And I think it's kind of silly to argue otherwise that Boss and Cassian kind of define the parameters of the meta in terms of what can be played in a way that's just not healthy for the meta. Like it's just not.
So I'm gonna change my little. I'm not gonna say like the meta itself is worse than the IDE meta because the IDE meta was terrible. I
Yeah.
think that the piece design is much worse
Okay.
when you are
Okay.
compounding. Again, you're compounding all this onto what Cassian can do.
Yeah.
Delta is actually less of an issue in terms of design space. It's just a couple things that they overlooked. The Cassian or the boss being able to get force back for the bomb damage is a little probably something if you make it just off of an attack now,
Yeah.
revenge has some play into him.
Yeah.
But his bomb wording on it being able to go, I'm gonna move someone on the completely other side of the board, I think is what
Yeah.
really turns him to a little overpowered. I don't think Fixer's a problem. I think Fixer's perfectly fine. Fixer's actually really slow. It's hard for him to get to the fight unless you focus on getting movement on him. And it just presents him to be a target. The tiebreaker on him's cute, but it makes him a target, and wounding him really hurts. The problem with Cassian is that yes, his play pattern is, he's relying on attrition to get where he needs to go and to
Mhm.
maintain that advantage. The issue is you're definitely going to see Kanan is going to see a backseat, I feel, in the meta going forward. I think Kanan's probably at the worst spot he's ever been meta wise. I think you were even kind of talking about that on the Slack a bit, that he's kind
Yeah.
of having problems.
Yeah.
Boss is kind of a real bad matchup for Kanan, and I think right now I think Cassian, if they want to keep up with Boss at Worlds on a min-max environment, they have to be playing PLC or Han.
Or Jin. I think Jin is fine but Jin, if you're playing Jin, the issue is that you run Jin and you're probably running K2. And the issue there is that I think K2 absolutely has play into the aggro meta, like Delta included. But I think that people think that K2 is like a shutdown aggro player or piece. And yes, he's very good into it. But if the Delta player has reps into K2 and knows how to shut K2 down, you can absolutely just kind of run the table with him, especially because K2, his attacks are not amazing. His activations aren't amazing. What is amazing is his lockdown and pairing him with Cassian. And so I think that if you're going to go like a Jin K2 route, you need to have a lot of reps into Delta because because Delta can leverage its play pattern just as well as you can in terms of being able to stack conditions and deal damage and keep you out of position.
So Jin has play. The problem is that Jin does not have any of the defense to match. Her win rate against boss right now is something like a 30%. On the matchup. It has some play, but the problem is how aggressive boss can get with Hunter, specifically Hunter. The Hunter boss variant is something I would not want to put Jin Cassian against. I think if you're going up against like a boss Obi list, Jin is great. Because that list isn't leveraging as much output and as much aggression. I think boss Hunter is a whole nother beast. I think it is the best pairing for boss by far. It doesn't need to play wound. Again, the supports of choice for that list are Wolfpack and Seven Scorch. And Wolfpack, when you're playing them with Hunter and Delta, do some real stupid things with the bottom part of their tree where they're going to dash and then climb. They become backpoint stealers, and they also have the best way of, I'm going to pin you, strain you, and disarm you. They are the one support in the game that turns your base and turret activation into a real crap activation. They're the only support in the game that can do that. And that list is scary. The amount of movement that the boss Hunter is bringing is a problem, and it's a problem that very few lists can answer. And the problem against that list is you have to play the wound game, and you have to play aggression into that real quick. Which is why Iden Vader is really good right now. Oh,
can you hear me, John?
Yeah,
I can hear you now.
Okay, yeah, we just had a thing. Nope. Okay, so
I heard what you said though.
Yeah, got it now. Cool.
Okay.
It's just how fast that list moves, and you got to play aggression into it.
I think that you're right. I think that you are absolutely right. I think that my takeaway from Zi-Fi. So I played. My list was a rebel. It was all rebels. It wasn't quite a Cassian core because I had so I had Kanan Mando as one pairing, then either Kanan Cassian or Princess Leia Cassian. And my takeaway from that event was that, so here's Princess Leia's problem. Her revenge attacks can do almost nothing to Delta, kind of looking at the square math, because Delta has a lot of crit conversion, crit blocking, crit mitigation. And that is what Princess Leia is relying on a lot of times with their 5 dice attacks in order to do something.
And Seven Scorch have steadfast protection.
Exactly, right. So there's lots of things against, mitigating against her. However, Princess Leia has the best rebel out of activation movement in the game. Her start of activation tactic gives both characters in a unit a dash. That is so good with rebel commandos, with Baze and Chirrut. It's a phenomenal ability. And then she has the ability to give even more movement, right? It'll cost you a force. And so she's just very flexible, right? She's a very flexible piece, and her revenge trigger is not conditioned on something being damaged with an attack, whereas Cassian's is, right? So you've got ways to respond to the bomb, right? And so I think Han. I'm going to play Han. I'm going to play some Han in the coming months to get a bead as to where he's going. Because my take is, and I know that this kind of goes against what we've been saying with respect to Cassian being busted. And Cassian's busted, he's too good. But my take has been, if I could pick to choose either Baze and Chirrut or Cassian, I would pick Baze and Chirrut. If my list can only include one of those things, I would take them. And the reason why is because I think they just raise the floor of these rebel lists in a way that, you're running, previous to them being released, you're running Han with rebel commandos, and then who knows what your other support is before they're released, right? You could run Pathfinders. There weren't a ton of great options. You could run with Spectre, but now that you can run Han with rebel commandos and Baze and Chirrut, my not hot take is that a list cannot be bad if it is running those two supports. As long as you're not right, as long as you're not doing something actively dumb, that list will be good in some way.
So
And
my
so,
my take, and I've had this take for a while now, and I made it was on one of my shatter thoughts. If you have a
yeah,
list and Cassian's your primary, and you have Base and Turret and Rebel Commandos as your other list, it doesn't matter what the other 3 units are. You have a competitive list.
absolutely,
You're
like
like,
absolutely right.
but what the reason why I say Han is, in my opinion, if you're going to look at what I would say as an overall meta take for best pairing for Cassian, the reason why my money is on Han.
Mhm.
Han has a revenge trigger that hits as hard as Kanan in terms
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
the crit cannon. A lot of people look at Han and they look at his smug scoundrel side, the side that that can do
Yeah,
the shove, the strain, the pin. And they go, this is really cool for condition stack. He can attack multiple units and do all these conditions, everyone, and shove people around. The simpler side, the side that you should be playing him on more often for a lot of your games, is the gunslinger side.
yeah,
That crit pistol, he does 4 damage on 2 results, and even on
yeah,
his revenge attacks, he's likely to get the 4 damage. The
yeah,
strength of that is when you combine it with Cassian. Now you have a revenge trigger with Han that actually is functional. And
yeah,
it's allowing you to punch back hard and to again maintain the parity of, well, I need to be mobile, but I also need to keep hitting hard if my stuff goes down. Han
yeah,
hits that trigger. The other thing that, again, Cassian's really good is softening things up. Han can start taking multiple wounds with his multi shots. 4 damage is enough to finish off T'd units.
yep,
And then you also throw in Chewbacca with his own bomb. Chewbacca can be a
mhm,
force neutral activation. Han can be force neutral. Han can also change the math with the momentum gaining if you can afford to spend the force. Um, Han is really powerful when you also start wounding things with the bomb, because it means mid struggle flip, you can get Han to another position and get him
yeah,
onto another point that might just turn on.
yeah,
He also, his tactic is almost as good as Leia's, but there
yep,
are certain circumstances where it is directly better than Leia's, and that is on the
yeah,
wider maps of First Contact and Never Tell Me the Odds, where you
yeah,
need an advance to get the point to point. Han is a lot of what you're going to be looking for, because Han allows these multi-point swings. This is why we saw Kanan and Han do really good, because Kanan is really good at getting wounds, and Han can move on a point. And we saw that at Worlds last time around, where he's able to flip 4 points with Kanan because Han can move on to a point.
yeah. And so the thing about that is also though that like again, Cassian with Baze and Chirrut and Rebel Commandos is also making it so that so my thing is that Han's revenge trigger, Cassian makes this a little bit different. But like Han's revenge trigger, most of the time, like I never plan on being able to trigger his revenge trigger. He's got a range 4 gun, and if your opponent is smart, your opponent's gonna play around it every time. Okay. But again, Cassian kind of changes that a little bit. But also, that's not the only thing that Han is doing. And the fact that he gets a dash when you get a wound and he gets to clear a condition means that, like, when you've got Rebel Commandos with Baze and Chirrut attacking people who have been softened up by Cassian's bomb, all of a sudden now Han is going to be dashing like crazy,
You're
right?
doing similar
And
things to what Rift Hampson
yep,
is doing. And
yeah,
that is, there's a reason why Han is at a very high win rate at the high levels of play. Not a lot of people take him in the top cut, but when they do, he usually wins or takes a majority of the victories. He is a
yeah. I think
very good piece.
Yeah,
And
I think Han's problem is that he is a difficult unit to run because he's got a lot of like moving parts in a way that like when should you be spending force to make a second attack, right? Like when should you be spending force in order to steal a momentum, right? Like there's lots of these questions that you where should he be positioned to maximize the value either of his revenge trigger or of his dash on wound. And the problem is I think that like Princess Leia is a lot more straightforward, right? Like her abilities are a lot more straightforward. Her defense is also better. Like their defensive profile
yes,
is
yes,
you're right. Like
100%.
and so there's just like these interesting I think Hans like he has got a lot of tools but I think that we have all kind of consistently underestimated him because they're difficult to run and it's not clear that the payoff is there. But I am much more thinking that I think the payoff is there, right? And I need to be running
I
him more than
think
I am.
what Cassian allows you to do with Han is that you can bare bones make Han really basic with Cassian. Cassian
Yeah.
turns on all of the elements of his identity. It turns on his revenge attack, so now he can do a revenge attack similar to that of Kanan. That's not
Yeah.
reliant on an attack wound. It's reliant on any type of
Yep.
wound. Um,
Yep.
he also has a Lumi slash Mundi style part of his identity where he can dash and get onto points. So you can
Yep.
play him
Yep.
as a bare bones. He's a mobility piece. He can get anywhere he needs to be with his tactic, and you can play him as just a good backup support attack style primary, where if you get the chance to line up his double attack to take multiple wounds, that's generally when I do his double attack. I don't use it on Gunslinger at all or on
Yeah.
his smug scoundrel side
Just
because,
smug scoundrel. Yeah.
like, yes, it's cute that you can spread conditions everywhere. You're doing
Yeah.
1 damage when you're doing that. It's not
Yeah.
enough, and in this game state right now, you need output. um
Yeah.
we're in a game state where right now you need to not worry about as revenge as much because you need to be playing the game very proactively, because if you try to play the slow game against Cassian, you're just going to get steamrolled on the attrition front. And if you're
Yep.
and you have to have the output to at least somewhat match what Delta is doing, even if you're at the back foot at the beginning against Delta. It's very much like how you were fighting Iden in the previous meta. You need to outlast them on the force economy scale, which is why Mandos were good into Empire for a good chunk of that last meta. You could play Mandos and they'd have to, it's a comeback game, but they can do it. Against Delta, you have to be, even if you lose struggle 1, you have to mess up their force economy. So in struggles 2 and 3, you can do what Spectres did back, and you're always at the back foot until they overtake.
Yeah.
And it's just the meta right now. I think I agree with you in terms of like it's definitely gotten way too aggressive compared to what
Yeah.
I'm liking. And again, it's all because Cassian is all about attrition while also having revenge. If you took his attrition part element away, the meta becomes a much more, okay, you got your displacement list to beat the revenge list and the revenge
Yep.
list.
Exactly.
And right now, what list is missing from the meta? Displacement sucks because you can't play it against revenge because they just out attrition you. Displacement is double bad against Delta because Delta just doesn't care.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that the problem there is Delta's just playing the old Iden game where it's like, oh, you brought your displacement cube. I'm just going to kill everything.
Yeah.
So, like, like it doesn't matter. And again, like that is the problem where, so I was playing one of my games at Zi-Fi was against a player named Michael Higley. So Michael Higley he's from Idaho. He is like an absolutely phenomenal player, incredible player, consistently does well at every event. Like I think he got second at slow last year, like our regional last year. He's just an extremely strong player. He was running OB Cam. I dropped Delta, or I'm sorry, I dropped Kane and Cassian into it. And as we were playing, one of the comments he made is like, the problem is that once you get ahead of me on damage, I just cannot keep up because like you get ahead of me on damage. So then I'm going to go with Cam. I'm going to smack somebody, yeet somebody off. And then you're going to wound 2 of my things and take 2 points, right? And like I can't go with Cam every activation. Like Cam's the best part of his list. He absolutely is. But the problem is you're coming with supports who are perfectly fine, but are nothing compared to Baze and Shira and Rebel Commandos, right? Like you've got Shakti, who is very good as a secondary for displacement, but she folds like a wet paper bag and isn't doing a ton of damage, right? And so like you're like, oh, I'm gonna take a point back every single turn, and I can take any point with my displacement. And it's like that's great, but the problem is once I start wounding 1 to 2 things per turn, then all of a sudden, like you can't hold any points, right? And he made that observation about like falling behind as OB Cam and just not being able to keep up in the current meta. And I think that's just a perfect description of what's going on.
Well, even Mace Obi right now is at a bad state in the meta. Mace Obi, which is one of the better defensive Republic lists in the game, cannot keep up with the damage from Delta. and
Yeah.
it can't keep up from the damage from the Shatterpoint activation of Base Shore and Rebel Commandos. They just go, I'm going to
Yeah.
kill your stuff. And right
Yep.
now, Mace is really good into Cassian on certain elements because he's one of the tankier ways to play. But you have to play Mace a little bit differently now. Right now, for me, leveraging Mace, Mundi and Obi are out of the question. I still
Yeah.
have a Mace list that I am taking to Adepticon. I've already locked it in. Um, but he's more of a battery style support, providing his tactic, um, relying on Vapad. You're playing him in the Vapad a lot more now. You're playing him as more of an aggressive support style piece,
Mhm.
but the list is designed to abuse Rule 17.
Yeah.
And I am still figuring out the primary I'm taking. I'm looking at Kit Fisto, Padme, even Asajj Ventress at this point. But Sev and Scorch with Pawns is something that I'm guaranteeing that I'm taking to Worlds. It's part of the list.
Yeah.
And I'm leaning on Padme right now. A lot of it has the movement to actually match Delta on a more consistent activation. Every activation in that list, I'm moving 3 bodies. Through Padme, through Pawns, through Rex, the 501st or 7 Scorch. They all can trigger additional movements from my secondaries, or my supports can provide additional movement through 7 Scorch with Rule 17, or I'm always first kid. And Mace is the battery that allows that to happen. And the math wise, the list actually hits Delta hard enough to where I can actually pull the wounds on 7 Scorch and Fixer, and the list can blitz points fast enough to fight Cassian. It's still not a guaranteed win or whatnot. Again, I've been able to push these lists as best as to 50-50, which is kind of the best that you can muster in this meta. Is you want it to be as even as possible to where, as long as you're positioning things right, you can fight and stay in a fight. My second list, I'm leaning on Han Cassian, and it's a safe fallback list. I can play it into everything, and I'm leaning. You saw the list. I'm leaning in with Chewbacca because Cassian unironically unlocks Chewbacca at this point as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as sold on Padme like as you are, and I know what you're talking about, and I've played against Delta Padme, and like her giving the extra dice on Rule 17 is no joke. I
well,
think the issue is more just that like I think that you could kind of run anything with Delta
that's
with
the
Pawn
trick.
7 Scorcher, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that anything becomes better, right? And the question is just like
What
what is
flex
it
do
that
you
like
want?
yeah.
And
Yeah,
my
exactly.
reason for picking her is she actually, outside of boss, she actually has the best range attack in Republic. Outside of
Yeah.
boss, when you're looking
Yeah,
at
her
her,
expertise is
she
insane.
actually hits like a truck. But what she's doing on her turn is she can, with her, I'm going to advance a full unit. She can advance Mace anywhere. She can advance Delta anywhere. She has this
Yeah.
ability to 1-2 punch and basically kill anything in the game because she has an expose on 2 on her aggressive negotiation side. When you combine
Yeah.
that with the 6 die uh, attack you get from 7 Scorch, it is doing similar things to what you do with Base and Turret or Jin, on the side where you get that expose on 2 with her 5 die attack and you just can light stuff up. Again, anytime you can apply expose right before an attack is huge. And 7
Yeah.
Scorch, when you're doing this every turn and you're making 6 die attacks, the biggest mistake people are making with Padme right now is that they are running her without Mace because you need the force battery, otherwise she gets too expensive real quick. And it's running her with her box. Um,
Yeah.
playing her as just as the primary you play with Pawn 7 Scorch makes her feel so much better compared to anywhere else. It's still something yet. Play it only if you're comfortable with it because she does have some pitfalls. But it's like I've played that with Obi-Wan, I've played that with Kit Fisto, I've tried it
Mhm.
I've tried Mace with just the full Delta box. I like the forward deployment with 7 Scorch because it kind of unlocks their full kit in terms
Yeah.
of Rule 17 just doing stupid things. And that list has the mobility. But that's the thing against Delta right now. You have to have these mobile lists. Honestly,
Yeah.
if Ewoks could hit harder, I would say low grade Leia would be great into Delta. The problem is they can't hit hard enough.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the issue is that I think my sense is like the problem for me with solving for the current meta, and I think your list idea is very cool. It's very creative and it's like leveraging these pieces in a very unique way. My problem is always that like it's unclear to me that what we're talking about is better or is even like comparable, like in the same tier as just running like Delta Hunter, right? Or Cassian Princess
Yeah.
Leia, I guess. I guess Han is like, and the problem I do not like, because what I love about Cassian and Baze and Chirrut is that they can go on a lot of lists. Like we could talk about 4 or 5 primaries. I think Cassian Mando is a terrifyingly great
Yes,
list.
that list is
Sam ran
scary.
that beat.
That list is
It's super scary.
scary.
Yeah, Sam beat me in the final with it, and convinced me in that game that Mando was a better piece than Kanan, in terms of this current meta. And then I played against Chris Sampson running a very similar list, except he had Mando, Bo, and Bo. I mean, like again, like Cassian plus Mando is very, very scary. And the problem for me is that like I love all of these awesome lists that you can run with Cassian, and I think that there might be a quote unquote best list, but it's just like the problem is that ultimately we kind of end up optimizing back to where we're just running like a very like you can just run Delta Hunter, right? Like you're gonna have this really cool Padme Mace list. It's doing all these awesome things. And I'm like, I think a lot of players could just run Delta Hunter and just kind of out damage you, right? And maybe that's not true. And
So
hopefully you crush them at Adepticon.
yeah,
But
so I'll get to. I can explain real quick why I'm on this Mace Padme thing, even into Delta.
yeah,
Where it has the huge advantage against Delta is in struggles 2 and 3.
sure.
The force economy when I'm playing Mace Padme, I get 9 force through my deck because
Yep.
of the Shatterpoint play.
Yep.
And 3 of my activations do not spend force, which means every turn, even if 7 Scorch are down, they can rule 17. Even if I'm
Yeah.
spending 2 force for it. I actually have a lot more output than Delta throughout the long of the game. Again, it also gives me enough movement to where I can match their movement. It's still going to be close to 50-50, but there is giving up the powerful boss play because the boss activation is the strongest activation in the game, I feel, right now, out of
Yeah.
any single
Crazy.
activation.
So good.
I'm giving that up for I have real consistent activations throughout the entirety of my list. Even Pawns does crazy stuff when I can move a character with his tactic. He can move up, get 3 damage and reposition, move next to 7 Scorch, and then trigger rule 17. And now they're scoring a point while also attacking into something that Pawns attacked. And now Pawns is able to impact 3 different points. Really fixes his weakness. And if my opponent's shooting Pawns, it means they're not shooting Padme and they're not shooting 7 Scorch. It's just a 7 health body. I'm like, yeah, you want to take them down? Cool. You waste an attack on them.
Yeah.
The other thing why I like the forward deployment on 7 Scorch right now is it guarantees you a better chance of putting them on a proper point. It also gets them a dash away from the midline on shifting, which means having them have that protection steadfast is going to be more alive most of the game compared to only some of the game at the beginning. And that's it plants a huge target on their back if you can alpha strike them and they're not on a point.
Yeah, I think it's a very cool. I agree. I think it's a very cool list, and I think if you can like unlock the play patterns, you've kind of got it.
Yeah, it's not a
like,
Mace,
I think it's very cool.
It's not a Mace Padme list. It's a 7 Scorch list.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Which is fine.
And the trick with like Cassian right now is the problem I have with Cassian is that he unlocks too many lists. But it's still at the end of the day, it's the Cassian, Baze and Chirrut Rebel Commando show. It's those 3 units. Yeah, you can have any 3 other flex units, like the secondaries don't matter, the other primary doesn't really matter. It's essentially the same list over and over. And
Yeah,
Cassian is
it's a very strong revenge trigger paired with very strong aggro activations that are very dynamic in your supports. And like that kind of base level is just it's just so good, right? Like it's so good. In a lot of ways, like it is, I know it's not the same as Iden, but in a lot of ways, like if those of us who remember the Iden meta, the thing about Iden was that was like boss. She had extremely strong activations. And like Cassian's activations are not amazing in his list. But the issue is with Iden, with Cassian, is that your two supports in the ISS and Dark Troopers pre nerf, and now Rangers and Baze and Chirrut are so good that you are going to shatter them most of the time, right? And you probably should shatter them most of the time. And that makes for like kind of very narrow lines of play, right? Where it's just like it's very clear what the best thing is. Like the cool thing about a list like Kamakin is that when you're going to shatter, most of the time you're thinking you want to shatter Anakin because Anakin is going to be able to do all these cool fun things, but you're like, well, I can also shatter Cam, and Cam is going to be able to make these cool attacks, and he's got this force displacement, and he can dash people around, or I
or
can do shock because she's yeeting everybody, right? You're asking yourself a lot of really interesting questions. You can also Shatterpoint your supports, although they're not as good. But like with Cassian lists, you're like, I am going to Shatterpoint either my Rebel Commandos or Baze and Chirrut. And the question is like, who should I shatter right now, right? That's just not as interesting, honestly, as like a line of play when you're just going to murder things.
like I said, Cassian does way too much for doing nothing on the table.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That I will die on now. And that's part of the issue why I think this meta is actually a bit worse than the Iden meta in that regard of list building. When we look at Iden, she was pairing with multiple things. You can play her with Veers for that. I'm gonna take every point on shifting, guaranteed. Turn one, the one list I can do that. That was a cool thing. You had her pair with Vader. You had her pair with what's his name, Moff Gideon. There was a lot. You had her play with Grand Admiral Thrawn for a really aggressive scoring list that had a ton of movement. Cassian's doing the same thing. And it's pigeonholing the game into a point where I hope that when AMG addresses this, because they are going to address this eventually, that they don't do the same thing they did to Empire, where we're going to nerf the Rebel supports, but not touch Cassian.
Yeah.
That is the opposite approach of what they need to do this time. They need to address Cassian. Because if you address Cassian, the Rebel supports don't need much tweaking. I think the one thing on Baze and Chirrut I'd like to see tweaked is that they don't refresh multiple force when they are wounded.
100% agree.
If it stuck to you refresh one force and that's it, they don't get to remove conditions for each token or anything. It makes them a lot more balanced. They still have
what I would do on that one is just say you can only refresh one force, and then you can remove additional conditions, right? So you can't because the problem for them is that they can do either. You can't condition stack them once they've been wounded because they can just remove everything, or they can refresh force. And it'd be better to just say we're going to take away the play pattern of allowing you to just refresh a gajillion force, keep them exposed and strained, for their activation. Right?
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, like, I'm fine if they do both, right? Like, I'm fine if they only say you can refresh one force. But I think that, like, there's nothing wrong with saying you can refresh one force and there's no additional refresh coming in. I also think, like, I mean, if we're talking about, like, I think that this town needs to be either deleted or reworked in a way that, like,
I think So how I would fix that ability, make it only happen on a struggle you lose.
That's exactly it. Like, that's exactly what I've been saying. Like, if we're going to keep it, you should only get it when you lose the struggle, right? And even then, it's still an extremely strong ability. But that means that you're only going to be able to use it once, right? And that's a lot better.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's a much better point.
Since you can't avoid it unless you really proactively move yourself off of points when you know you're going to win that struggle or whatnot. Anytime you get an ability where it's just unavoidable damage and it's that freaking crazy, because it gets really stupid on Sabotage Showdown where you have 6 active points.
It's insane. Insane.
Like At Evergreen, my Empire opponent in round, I want to say 3, I was playing on Sabotage. I rolled 3 damage with never with the bomb. And
Yeah.
this was after winning Struggle 1, after wounding 3 of his units already. And within the first turn, I wounded 2 other units.
Yeah.
And he had 1
It's
character
insane.
alive at the beginning of Struggle 2. He just conceded. He said, "This town is busted." And I'm like, "Yeah, this is as bad of a
Yeah.
play experience, if not worse, than Not So
Yeah.
Fast and Mind Trick." Um,
Yeah.
it is
Yeah,
that
it feels awful. It feels awful. And, like, and that's the thing is, and I think that, so in full disclosure, after the Sci-Fi invite, I actually wrote a letter to AMG and I was like, obviously, it sounds so funny, and I sound like such a boomer saying this, but it's like, I think that, like, AMG needs to know that, there is a competitive meta out here that is existing in which this thing is happening, and they might or might not care about what happens in the competitive meta. But there's also the sense in which players who are showing up to things like the Evergreen Open, who haven't played a ton of games against Cassian, are going to show up and have something like this town go off and just feel super demoralized and be like, well, I don't want to come back to a tournament, right? Like,
yeah.
if this is going to be my experience. And that's fundamentally what I think is the biggest problem with having like an imbalanced meta, is that, like, the problem with the Iden meta was that Iden was everywhere. She had a very specific play pattern. And if you were not a grindy player, this is going to sound super rude when I say this, but I'm hear me out. You could not win a tournament because if you weren't running Iden, you were going to play against someone who'd played a ton of reps on that list, knew how to play that list into whatever you were running. And what you were running was fundamentally worse than the Iden list. And so you just weren't going to win that matchup 90% of the time. And that, people might say that's not true, but like, I played a lot of games and I think that is correct, right? The problem is that, like, when we have an imbalanced meta, people think that it's only affecting the competitive players, but that's absolutely not true. Like, it is affecting people who want to, like, people who are casual but want to play in tournaments. They want to play in events, but they feel like they're going to show up and it's going to be the Cassian boss show, and they don't want to play. Like, we've got a really good local player in Utah. He runs a lot of Hondo. Guess what? Hondo can't play in this meta. He just dies, right? Like, and all of his lists just die. And
Well,
so the problem is you're actually punishing these players who are more casual, right? It's not the sweaty tryhards who are feeling the weight of this, right? It's people who want to play in events but feel like they can't because the meta is tightening them out, right? Like that experience that you talked about with the person getting bombed and then just being like, oh, well, I just lose, right? Like, how am I going to come back
and
from
that's
this?
the problem we have right now. Right now, the game is at a point where we need every player we can get to go to these events, because we do not have the numbers, the player base to
Yeah,
have like you see Warhammer or MCP, where you get these big 100, 200 player tournaments and
yeah,
everyone can play the super sweaty and play the competitive game. Shatterpoint, half the players at Worlds were casuals. They half of the
yeah,
players at the World Tournament are casuals, and we need that player base right now. The
yep,
problem we're having with Cassian is the same problem we had at the very beginning of the game with Vader. The Vader Grievous was the best baby seal clubber in the game. It just was. Iden did the same thing. Cassian and
yeah,
Boss are doing the same thing. They are clubbing baby seals.
yeah,
And it is the design of this game. I love this game, but AMG needs to learn from their how they handled the game, and I am hoping that Mini Extravaganza announces a
yeah,
small patch before Adepticon. I would
yeah.
like
I would love that.
I would like to see Cassian tweaked. I would like to see Boss's bomb addressed, and we start from there. That's the only changes that I would ask them to make is let's tone down Cassian's support a little bit, and let's tone
Yep,
down the bomb on Boss and see what that does to the meta. We don't need to
yeah,
touch Phase and Turret right now. We don't need to touch Seven Scorch right now. I think right now the primaries are the big things enabling these lists. And when it's the Cassian, Phase and Turret Rebel Commando show, but Rebel Commandos and Phase and Turret actually feel pretty balanced outside of Cassian when you're not playing them in Cassian. They actually don't feel overtuned. When I'm playing Phase and Turret by themselves, I'm like, yeah, they're consistent. They have a low floor, but they're not one-shotting everything. They're not freaking doing broken math to the game.
Yeah. See, I mean, I think I'm a little more jaded than you on this, and that I would absolutely still nerf Bays and Chariot. Like, I think that change you've proposed is like a totally fine
Oh yeah,
change,
I don't
right?
think you
Like,
changed their
yeah,
free focus. I love their stance flipping. I love that it's all
yeah,
perfect in the lore, but that
yeah,
tactic needs
yeah,
addressing. The tactic is the
yeah.
broken thing on them.
Yeah,
Always had
I think that like yeah, I think that if they're gonna release a mini patch, just do like fix Cassian's bomb, do something about his focus or his Shatterpoint ability. Baze and Chirrut need something, and then boss you got to tweak the bomb. And like you make those three changes, right? Or like some blend of changes with those three things, and I think immediately the meta is at least interesting, right? Like
and
okay, because if we can if this town is not wiping out OB cam lists, then all of a sudden now there's a really strong counter to these rebel revenge lists, right? And
yes,
if boss isn't able to blow up at any point on the map, all of a sudden these attrition folk like Nando's, right, can now play in a game where they've got a force economy advantage over boss, right? Because their stuff's going to get wounded, they're not going to care. The problem is you cannot run Nando's into Delta because your supports are going to have like if they effectively have 5 health, right? And they also
everything.
can't run it again,
Your
right? So
secondaries go down to 6.
yeah,
It's just bad. Your Mandos have
yeah,
one payoff unit to run, really, and it's
yeah,
coverts, and
yeah,
the everything else is just no. But
yeah.
I also, if they do a patch, I want to buff Dark Troopers, revert
Oh
them.
my gosh.
So listen, hear me out. Revert them back to where they were
Oh boy. Oh no.
and make them a 5.
Okay, okay, that's
Make
fair.
them these
That's fine.
scary dudes, because guess what? Right
Yeah.
now, Empire needs a good 5 cost support. That's like the one thing they're
Mhm.
missing. They're missing a 5 cost that can play like a Han and Chewie style, but for them. Revert Dark Troopers, give them their 8 health protection and everything like that, and then make them a 5. And they are
Okay.
that's something I'm like, well, now it gives you argument. Do I play Krennic in a list now just
Yeah.
so I can take buff Dark Troopers without a tax on my secondary? Things like
Yeah, that's a spicy take, but I actually like I'm fine with that. I think that's a great. I think that if because they are 5s, like that old card, like that is
oh,
absolutely a 5, right?
maybe giving them the 7 attack die instead of the 6 on range, and yeah, 100% they'd be like they're a 5, they're a perfect 5. But I don't
Yeah.
even think they need the attack die. They were defensively stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Immunity
Their
to
defense was pin and displacement. Yeah. I think that's a really cool change. And I would love if I think they should unnerf Magnas,
They
right?
need to
Like
buff Magnus.
because
Get revert. Okay, so you revert them back to their original state, except you keep the pin that they had on their tree away, because 3 shoves followed by a pin is stupid. Um,
yeah.
but you make it so that they can follow your primary when your opponent's primaries are moving. Rogue support had this idea for a change.
Ooh. That's a
And
cool idea.
they move towards your primary when your opponent's primary is walking up. It is them walking up to bodyguard your primary.
That's a super cool idea. Yeah. I
Look,
mean, I think if we're talking about like these wish lists of things like those are some very, very cool ideas. I think they more just like I think that those are the things that where I would love if AMG was going to say we're going to because I think that the expectation was, at least based on what like Will Schick said, I think was he said we're going to release this big patch in May of and the year of 2025. And then we're going to look at, every few years kind of having another major update. And I think that the sense in the community, at least the people we talk with, and again, this is actually not a bunch of sweaties. Like the Slack has a very wide range of competitiveness in terms of players. We've got a lot of casuals on the Slack. And I think there is a very strong sense that every 2 years is just frankly like the game won't live on a competitive, like people will only attend on the most casual of bases and like the game's popularity will really plummet if they're going to only be addressing it every 2 years. I think they've got to do something on a slightly regular basis. And I think that, like, kind of based on what everyone is saying, that like there's a lot of pressure on them to do something about Cassian and Delta before Adepticon because the thing was like we know now that this is absolutely a problem. And it's not like a problem where it's like, well, let's kind of see like what the next like ream of boxes does in order to bring this down. Like we know we've got Balin and Morgan coming out, and unless those things are busted and then just kind of like take the place of Cassian and Boss, then like they're not gonna supply. It's not like they're gonna add these tools that are gonna make it so that Cassian and Boss are gonna retreat, and all these other lists are going to thrive, right? Like
And there's
we
not,
know what the
there's
problems
also
are.
not enough time to test it. Like,
Yeah. Oh,
unless
great.
they reveal what the boxes do at Mini Extravaganza, which I will get to Mini Extravaganza here in a little bit because that's going to be a little subtopic. Because
Yeah.
I have some grimes with AMG, and
Okay.
you want to hear a rant? I'm gonna say it. If Mini Extravaganza is not a banger of an event where they give us a good chunk of new stuff that's coming out or some actual stats, the game's going to die as soon as the license runs out.
Hmm. I don't want to be that dire, but like it's really hard to argue. It's hard to argue that like do you
It,
remember you were at Adepticon?
yes. And when we only got the 2 new boxes announced and then like nothing else, and yes, we got the balance pass. Oh boy, did it kind of feel bad. I'm like, wait, where's all the other stuff down the line? Like, couldn't you at least tell us some inkling of what's coming out? Right now,
Yeah.
we got Balin Skull and we got Morgan Elspeth. If they don't announce and show off any future boxes beyond that, we have no idea what's coming out. It means we're going to be going 6 months into
Yeah.
Adepticon without knowing what else is coming out, and we're gonna have to wait till Adepticon's reveal panel to know what the future boxes are. The
Yeah,
game's
that's not
hype
gonna
is
work.
going to die, and
Yeah.
that is not a good thing. Like, I have a gripe with AMG, and my gripe is gonna depend fully on how good Mini Stravaganza is.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I'm kind of with you in that like I just don't think if mini extravaganza, I think that what AMG needs to do is that so Legion has had, man, this is like such a wide ranging, this is way wider of a range than I expected we would go with this. And I hope that your listeners are, I'm
my
sure they're
my
like,
listeners
what the heck are these
know
guys?
that I go on tangents because I don't edit anything. Like, this
Yeah.
is what it is, and
Here we go.
it still leads that this is kind of a meta thing because if we don't get anything new, we're gonna be screwed with Boss and Cassian until the freaking next balance pass.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the thing is that like if you look at how so Legion is getting a ton of support. Marvel Crisis Protocol is getting a ton of support. Now people are going to say like, "Oh, those are like starter boxes or whatever," but like the point is that AMG is investing resources into those games in order to make sure that they'll stay relevant, that people are going to keep playing them, and that most importantly that new players are going to have like entry points into the game. Like AMG is clearly setting Legion up to be like a long haul game. Like they want that game. They want that game to work. They want it to work for a long period of time, right? They
Oh,
wouldn't be investing these resources if
you gave me a thought.
well, but
Holy,
here's my
yeah.
here's my thing is based on what you're saying is that if AMG at Mini Stravaganza, if they like treat it so that like if we don't know right like what's going to be coming out or what's going to be getting released, and if they don't indicate that there's some kind of balance patch coming, I think that what that indicates is that AMG is just not as serious about Shatterpoint as we would like them to be, right? And you can do with that what you will, but like I don't think that there's any kind of credible argument that that's not going to have an impact in terms of like the health of the game, right?
Well,
Like
look what they did.
competitive players,
Look what they did with X-Wing.
yeah,
X-Wing, they started slowing down the releases. They started not announcing new stuff. They kind of just slowly let it drift until they decided to kill it. That's what I'm
yeah,
afraid for Shatterpoint. Now,
yeah. Yeah, you go.
so, but what you gave me an idea. What if they announce a new core box at Ministrav?
That'd be amazing. Oh, that'd be amazing.
I mean,
That would be an incredible thing.
we are in year 3. A new
Yep.
core box, a full new premier list level of pieces that just get added to the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that'd be amazing. Like, that would be absolutely amazing. I would love it if they would do that. And I think that, again, like what you need for at least my opinion is you need like excitement to always kind of like be in the air. And I know that makes us sound like entitled brats, but like you need to always be like expecting some kind of like we've got to have something that we're looking forward to, right? Like they're going to be releasing a patch in order to address the meta concerns. They're going to be releasing the reason we're playing Star Wars is because we love the IP, right? Like, and we want to know what characters we love and care about are going to be getting released, right? And you need that hype. That's like why we're playing these games is like to get excited about these characters and these stories. And so I absolutely think that like AMG, I'm not like I mean, I don't know how dire it is, but I think that if they don't make a clear signal that they're really invested in the health, the long term health of the game, I think it will have a really detrimental impact in terms of everyone's like willingness to play. Competitive players will roll off into other games, right? Because they'll be like, well, if I'm not going to get the competitive I don't want to play into Cassian boss meta forever, and I'll just roll off into another game, right? And newer players will, I mean, they will play, but they're just not going to be as much product for them to buy. There won't be as much hype, as many local events for them to attend. And so there's just kind of like a death spiral that happens like when it's clear that a game isn't being supported. We saw it with X-Wing. Like I saw it with Imperial Assault. I saw it with X-Wing. I saw it with Destiny, Star Wars Destiny, like these FFG games. And it's like there's this exact same pattern every single time. It becomes clear that your game isn't getting supported. Top level players spin off into other games. It leads to like lesser community involvement, which leads to fewer events, which leads to less hype, which leads to, you know, worsening sales. And then like the game just kind of like implodes. And so, and you just don't want that, obviously. Like Shatterpoint is way too amazing and way too young of a game for that to happen. So
Yeah,
I hope they.
we're in year 3, and I believe they do 5-year contracts with Disney products. So it's like a 5-year license that they
Oh,
do, I think. So we still have
awesome.
2 more years. At least that's what I heard and through other people talking about it, which makes sense. That, you know, they want to sell products for this long. Unlimited has a 5-year plan. And they were
Mhm.
talking about one of their previous Adepticons that they had like a 5-year plan, which is again leads to the credence of the license idea. I just don't
Yeah.
want Mini Extrav to go, okay, here's a picture of Balin Skull, Morgan Elspeth boxes, no stat cards or anything. And then here's the terrain that we were supposed to get you in November, and we're going to push it
Yeah.
out a little bit later. And then that's the end of the announcements. If we get
Yeah.
at least 2 new boxes announced at Mini Strav or a new core set, or and some like maybe just release the ability cards of Balin Skull and Morgan Elspeth,
Yeah.
it doesn't need to be the biggest thing ever, but they got to give us some new information. They have to give us something new, and it has to be substantial enough to bite us towards Adepticon.
Yeah.
And preferably release both Balin Skull and Morgan Elspeth before Adepticon. That's another thing you can do. If they do that,
I would love that.
um, because as of right now, if we do not get those releases, we're stuck in a boss meta, and Adepticon, I'm gonna say it. Last year at Adepticon, I had a lot more fun at the team tournament than I did at the World Championship.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Worlds, I played, of my 6 games I played at Worlds, because I made it to day 2, got knocked out after round 2 of day 2. 5 of them were against Empire.
Yeah. Ugh. Ugh. Gross.
Yes. And I was hoping that I would get to play a little bit more Rebels, because I would have loved to have played Mace Mundi against more Rebelists. I only got to play that list 1 time because I had to keep on playing against freaking Iden.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. How it goes.
So it's interesting. Like, I know, listeners, we've been kind of sounding like downers on this episode, but the meta is both in an exciting spot, but also not in an exciting spot. It is, we figured out this meta solved really quick once we got the rest of these releases out. And I was already starting to see how the meta was going to unfold. And people argued against me, saying that the meta is still wide open. And I'm like, it really is not. Once we get these boxes of the Jin, the one surprise we had from August was how good Rift Hampson was. That is the one
Yeah.
surprise. Everything
Yeah.
else, we all knew Boss was going to be good. We all knew that Jin's box was going to be good. I think Bodhi got a little overhyped compared to the rest of that box. I think Bodhi's actually the worst part of that box. But we knew they were going to be good. We knew how good Base and Turret were going to be before we even saw their stat card. We knew how good they were going to be at Worlds.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a theory on this thing about like, talking negative about it because I'm a pretty sweaty player, right? You're a pretty sweaty player. You're also a lot more creative of a player than I am. But like we both like want to do well at events we attend, right? And I think that's totally fine. I like the net gathers of every kind, right? And it's good to have players who are casual. It's good to have players who want to win, and like we kind of all balance each other out. My thing is that I think when people are like you're being a little too negative about the meta and it's bad for the health of the game, it is our job to, as participants in this community, to speak truthfully about what it is that we see. Now, it is based on an appropriate, like you want to have an appropriate foundation of thought and experience, right? In terms of like what you're saying. Us talking about how Cassian's too good and Baze and Chirrut are too good. Like there's one thing when people are like, oh, like Rift Tamsin's terrible, right? And Rift Tamsin's super bad, and AMG has released this unit it's dumb. Separatists are screwed. Blah 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 blah. Right? Like you don't really have like a very credible basis for making that kind of an opinion until you've played with him, right? And then after you played with him, you adjust your judgment. We have played so many games with these things that like when we say things like the meta is out of balance, these things are too good, these things are exerting too much pressure, it's not like that there is something out there waiting to be tested that's going to like fix what we're saying, right? Like someone might say, oh, I've got a counter to these things. I want to tell you that you don't. And that if you think you do, it's because you haven't been playing against players who are very good who are playing these things, right? And that sounds rude, I know, but like I think it's very important that we have a very clear picture of what it is that we're talking about with respect to how strong these things are, right? You don't want to be equivocal about something when you've got like again an appropriate basis to make the kind of assertions that you're making, because that's something that's going to help AMG in terms of like how it guides the future health of the game. If you pull punches, then when you pull punches, what that does is it leads people to think that there is a healthy environment when in fact there isn't, right? And so I mean, I don't think we should be unnecessarily down, right? And we shouldn't be like constantly, crying wolf. But I think that when we can make judgments, and I'll say that I hear lots of comments on the Slack and on Discord where people are like, oh, like this is the worst, like this is the worst that the meta has ever been, or blah 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 blah. And I think like we hear a lot of things and you instantly kind of discount people who are immediately making like really extreme comments. But when people have been playing the game a lot, and are very reasonable people, like I'll think of someone like Chris Sampson, when he is saying something like this feels out of balance, that's when like your warning bell should be going off at that point, right? And so don't be unnecessarily dire, but also recognize you kind of got to see the world.
You have to recognize the problem. And a lot of people say that Cassian's not that bad, that he doesn't feel dynamic. What is he really doing to the game system? It's what he's doing is not during his turn. It's the mechanics of the game. He fundamentally breaks the mechanics. And this is the thing. Everyone looked at Boss and they go, oh, he looks overpowered right off the bat. A lot of people, a lot of the competitive players knew right off the bat that Boss looks like a problem. He was instantly. It took him a while to get there because his play patterns aren't figuring. People go, well, he's a harder primary to play. I'm like, no, it's people just having to take the time to actually learn his play patterns. Once you learn his play patterns, he's actually extremely simple. He is not that complicated to play once you learn how to leverage him. And the same thing can be said about every single piece in the game. Once you figure out and get the reps into it, you can't base things off of, well, it looks like it's complicated to play. Every piece has their own complications to play unless they are super simply designed. Someone like a Vader Jedi Hunter. Vader Jedi Hunter clearly has one play pattern. I'm going to walk up and kill something. But when you look at these other dynamic style characters, you're seeing how much movement Boss has, and people were having problems with it at the beginning of the game, trying to figure out how to play it. It's because there is so much movement and so much tech on his card. And that is the problem. Once people figure this out, Adepticon, we have 5 months until Adepticon. People are going to be testing Boss. I really do think that Boss Hunter is going to represent 70 to 75% of Top Cut is going to be Boss. That is my
Yeah.
prediction because like you said, he has play into most everything.
Yeah.
And the problem is that the list that counters him does not counter Cassian.
Yeah.
Because if you're
Yep.
Vader Iden is really good against boss. Vader Iden is not good against Cassian. It is not. It
Yeah.
has some serious problems. And that is the issue. And
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this, that 100% of the Zi-Fi cut, players were either running Boss or Cassian, and some over them were running both. But there was not a single player in the Zi-Fi top cut. So I mean, it's Zi-Fi, like there's a lot of sweaty players there. And it was a large tournament. Like I think we our final day signups were 44, and I think we were playing with like 41 based on drops, really. But so that's a lot. That's a lot of players. But not a single player in the cut was not running either Cassian or Boss. So, I mean,
and
great for that.
right now, Cassian is holding an advantage in terms of the numbers of wins and everything.
Yeah.
Don't be surprised if it flips.
Yeah.
I think we're in for the long haul with this one. And I do think that they will get, hopefully AMG is smart and they will address it if they start, because they just did an emergency patch on MCP not too long ago where
I did not know that.
they they did a patch where they patched a couple characters, I think, and it was something like they just had a big patch and then they did a small patch that addressed a couple of things, like less than, like, I want to say like 6 months later. So they will do small patches for something here and there, kind of like how they did with Bo-Katan and the Clan Kreese. They made them all eras.
Yeah.
If they might have to do a couple small patches here and there when they notice something is pushing on the game system. And Cassian is 100% something that he doesn't need a major change. He just tweak something small about him. His bomb,
Yeah.
frankly, his bomb needs to go. If you remove that,
Yeah.
then he might be balanced.
Yeah.
The other thing you can do, make him 8 points.
Yeah. I'm fine with all these changes. Like I'm here for all of these changes.
Make him 8 points, remove the bomb, and now he's perfectly fine. Now, if you're taking Basenshire, you have to take a 3 with him. You can't do this 9.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say this, AMG, stop making 9-point primaries. It's
Yeah.
a problem in the game.
Yeah. Unless it's Cat. Cat's fine.
Cat's fine, but that's because he's like super generic and he's kind of a bounty hunter doing what he wants to do. And he's not even really the bounty hunter primary that you build around. It's IG-88. Let's be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
And but AMG, just cool it down with the 9 costs a bit, because they fundamentally can break the game. I think more than a 7, more than anything. When you make it that they can take any combination of stuff, especially in some of these eras. Whoo boy.
Yeah. Yeah. You are absolutely correct.
All right, Liz, do you have any kind of like final thoughts? I know this episode's kind of a downer, people, but it's something that needs to be addressed and that people need to be prepared for at things like Worlds. It's a boss Cassian world, and if it doesn't get addressed, it's going to be a boss Cassian world for a while.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think my sense is kind of like, I love Shatterpoint. Shatterpoint's an amazing game. I think all the things we've talked about, we're talking about this from a place of loving the game and wanting it to improve. And so you should still like, and also to be totally honest, like I think the patch that AMG released was so good that it gives me a lot of confidence for them in terms of like their design. So I think I just want them to be more willing to pull the trigger on things. And if they do, I think then Shatterpoint's going to be an amazing game for a long time.
So there is a way. I'm okay if they don't do a patch before Adepticon. I do think they should look at the results of Adepticon and make it and do a slight patch after. If they do that and let Worlds be the final thing of this big meta, let all the accumulation of all the new releases, and then they do a patch like after every Adepticon, kind of like what they did, and it's like a small yearly one, so they can address certain things, and that way the new year's releases can really have impact. I think that's another kind of way they can do it, and it would be good. If they don't do a patch before Adepticon, I'm okay with that because it means at least we can prep for Worlds and we know what we're playing against.
Yeah.
But after that, after Adepticon, this there because they'll have a lot of data they can draw from. They can definitely go, okay, this is a problem. We need to address it. Here's another April or May patch, and call it good.
Yeah.
And if they do it yearly, it means they can kind of test the waters with it and not, nerf the Magna Guards, which haven't been meta relevant for like a year.
Yeah, that was that's a nerf that didn't age so well. That's for sure.
Yeah. I will say this though. I do feel vindicated in saying on how good the Aqua Droids are. Because I have been on their praises since I started playing
You
them. And
they were certainly underestimated. I'm not sure how good they end up ultimately being, but like that's also in the context of the current meta. If they change Baze and Chirrut and Delta, then all of a sudden it could be that like, oh
I
wait,
I
these
think
guys
they're on
are
par
super
with
OP.
Han and Chewie. I think they are very
Yeah.
much on par with Han and Chewie. They have a
Yeah.
very simple play pattern, but man, they look bad on paper, and then they start playing them, and you're like, these guys are actually kind of good.
Yeah.
All right, listeners, this has been the chosen one. Go subscribe and listen to Zion's Finest. They've been doing this a lot longer than most of the other podcasts out there. I think you guys are either the oldest or second oldest podcast at this point. I think it's between you and Hello There at this point in terms
We've
of.
been we've been yeah, we've been doing it for a while. We've been doing it since the game launched. So I'm sure that like Rogue support, Momenta support, those guys have got to be up there too. But we've definitely been at it for a while.
Yeah, are you going to be going to a Adepticon this upcoming time around? Since you.
We're definitely going to Adepticon. So we are all planning on it. We're staying at the Fister, which is apparently haunted, and so
Oh, that'll be
hopefully we
fun.
don't get ate by no ghosts. But yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Maybe you'll get visited by the ghost of Mother Talzin.
That's exactly right. Mama
Speak,
T, she's gonna be
Speaking of
mad.
a character that needs an update, they need to give
Yeah.
her the same treatment they gave to Mace Windu. Uh,
Oh,
make
that's such a cool idea.
make her tactic able to move herself and the
Yep.
full Dathomirian unit, so she now
Yep.
has mobility, and make it
Yep.
so her reactive is an innate, so that way you can still get the coordinate fire exposed and still get the heals.
Yeah, I am going to join you in any bandwagon to buff Mama T because she is an amazing character and she needs to be played more.
I'm excited to
So
see what Dathomirian shenanigans we can get with that Morgan Elspeth box. Like,
yes,
night,
that will be super
I
cool.
want those night troopers to have that Dathomirian tag and the stormtrooper tag, and I'd be like, yes, now we're cooking.
Yeah. Yep. That would be amazing.
All right. This has been The Chosen One, a Star Wars Shatterpoint podcast. Thank you for watching this episode of The Chosen One. If you'd like to watch the next video, you can watch the one in the link above. And if you want to listen to the podcast, you can listen to the playlist below. Thank you and have a nice day. Thank you for your support. Please like and subscribe.